All right, let's dive right in. If you're in the broadcast world, you know the jump from ATSC 1.0 to 3.0 is way more than just a simple upgrade. It's a complete reimagining of the business. So today we are going deep on the tech side of this transition. We're going to break down the key differences in the signal, the huge performance gains you can expect, and of course, the very real challenges of actually making the switch.
Now, just for some context, this explainer is part 4 of a 10-part tutorial for broadcast professionals. The whole thing is based on a really comprehensive report from Virtualization Options LLC, and we're focusing specifically on the 4th chapter, which gets right into the nuts and bolts of the technology.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll hit the physical layer. That's the very foundation of the signal. Then we'll look at the transport architecture, which is all about how the data gets packaged up. After that, we get to the good stuff, the payoff, all the performance gains for your business. And finally, we'll look at the price, the implementation challenges, which, are pretty significant.
Okay, let's start at the very bottom, with the most fundamental change between these two standards, the physical layer. This is all about how that signal physically gets from point A, your transmitter, to point B, the viewer's TV. And honestly, this is where the biggest technological leap really happens.
The absolute key difference here is the modulation scheme. ATSC 1.0, the old standard, uses something called 8VSB. You can think of this as one giant powerful super Y-wave for all of your data. It works great for fixed antennas that have a nice clear line of sight. But ATSC 3.0 completely changes the game. It uses OFDM, which spreads the data across literally thousands of smaller subcarriers. It's like turning that one big highway into thousands of smaller, more nimble, and more resilient local roads.
So what does switching to all those little roads, to ODFM, actually get you? Well, because the signal is spread out, it's way more resistant to multipath interference. That's when the signal bounces off buildings and causes ghosting or just complete dropouts. This is what finally makes reliable reception on a phone or deep inside a building possible, two massive weak spots for ATSC 1.0. It also makes something called single-frequency networks, or SFNs, a really practical and powerful option.
Okay, so we've got the signal figured out. Now let's move up a level and look at the data itself, the transport architecture. And this isn't just a technical tweak, it's a total philosophical shift. We're moving away from a rigid one-way broadcast pipe to a super flexible framework that speaks the native language of the internet.
And here's what that looks like in practice. ATSC 1.0 uses the old-school MPEG-2 transport stream. It stuffs everything into these fixed 188-byte packets. Yeah, it's reliable, but it's incredibly rigid. ATSC 3.0 just throws that entire concept out the window and embraces Internet Protocol, IP, the exact same system that runs the entire internet. Suddenly, everything, video, audio, data, is just a data packet, exactly like the ones flying around your home Wi-Fi network.
The power you get from using IP is just immense. It means your broadcast gear can now talk seamlessly to internet infrastructure. You can do adaptive bitrate streaming, just like Netflix, where the picture quality adjusts to signal strength. You can build cool new hybrid services that pull data from both the broadcast and the internet at the same time. And, maybe most importantly, it opens the door for a return path, giving the TV a way to talk back to the broadcaster. That's a huge deal.
This IP flexibility even changes something as basic as the program guide. In ATSC 1.0, you have PSIP. It gives you the basics: channel name, what's on now, what's on next. It works, but that's about it. In ATSC 3.0, you get service layer signaling, and because it's built on XML, basically the language of web pages, it can deliver incredibly rich, dynamic information. We're talking cast info, links to related content, detailed accessibility options, all of it updated on the fly. Okay, so we've covered the how. Now for the really important part, the why. Let's talk about the payoff. How do all these tech upgrades actually translate into real, bottom-line business advantages for a broadcast station?
This quote from the source report pretty much nails it. ATSC 3.0 provides measurable advantages in nearly every category while introducing implementation complexity. And that's the core trade-off right there, isn't it? A massive, massive upside, but it comes with some serious hurdles.
First, let's just look at the advantages. The service flexibility you get is incredible. We're talking about true 4K video with high dynamic range, immersive audio formats, and then the real business game changers. The ability to do targeted advertising, use your spectrum for data casting to create new revenue, and build interactive apps that were just flat out impossible with the old one-way system.
And it's not just about the cool new services. In the long run, there are some serious operational efficiencies to be had.
Shifting to an all-IP workflow can eventually lower the cost of all that specialized, expensive broadcast hardware. Using single-frequency networks could mean you need fewer transmitter sites to cover the same area. The whole system is built for the cloud, and a lot of maintenance can be done with a software update instead of a hardware swap.
But, and it's a big but, to get to all those great things, you have to get through what the report calls that implementation complexity. It's so important to have a clear-eyed view of this, because the move to ATSC 3.0 is a massive project with some very real, very difficult challenges.
It really all comes down to 3 huge hurdles. First, you need new equipment pretty much from top to bottom in your signal chain. Second, since it's not backward compatible with old TVs, you're looking at a long, expensive, and complicated period of simulcasting both signals. And third, it requires everybody to work together. Your station, the cable companies, the satellite providers, the TV makers, the whole ecosystem has to be in sync.
Now, let's pause for a second and define a really critical term, the return path. All this means is an internet connection from the viewer's TV back to you, the broadcaster. This is the absolute key that unlocks things like targeted advertising, real interactivity, and audience analytics. But, and you have to hear this part, it is an optional feature in the ATSC 3.0 standard.
This table right here tells the whole story. Look at the mandatory column. A TV has to be able to decode the 4K video and the advanced audio. Great. But now look at those bottom 2 rows. The return path and DRM support, both are listed as optional. This creates a huge problem. It means that many of the most valuable new business models, like targeted ads or premium content, are not guaranteed to work on every single TV set out there. That creates a ton of uncertainty for broadcasters who are investing in these new features.
And the headaches don't stop at your transmitter. Getting your brand new 3.0 signal carried on cable systems is a whole other level of complex. They have to transcode it back to a format their set-top boxes can actually understand. The 4K signals eat up more of their bandwidth. And there are still some really big unanswered questions about how the old must-carry rules apply to all these newfangled IP-based services.
It's a very similar story for the satellite providers. Transponder space for full 4K local channels is super limited and very expensive. The entire population of satellite receivers has to be upgraded to handle the new video formats. And critically, most satellite viewers don't have a reliable return path, which makes all those interactive services pretty much a non-starter for them.
So that brings us to the final thought here. We've seen the incredible potential, right? And we've also seen the very significant hurdles. So the question I want to leave you with is this. When you weigh those massive performance gains against these really tough implementation challenges, what's the single biggest factor driving the timeline at your station? Is it money? Is it competition? Is it a new market opportunity? Or is it something else entirely?